Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jeep Journals. Today is Saturday, May the 21st, 2022. The first time I came to Big Bend National Park, it was 1993. I believe it was during a Thanksgiving break, and it was because the company that my dad worked for had group company outings that they organized for the employees to participate in if they wanted. It was kind of like team builders before team builders were a thing. And so because of my dad's work, I was exposed to this park. And driving up Basin Road, I saw a black bear cross the road. I jumped out of the van after it had stopped so that we could all see the bear. And with my 110 millimeter film camera, clicked off many photos, many of them blurry, and I was hooked. In my youth, I really enjoyed a show called Wild America, and there was this character who told a story of wildlife. His name is Marty Stauffer, and he was like an inspiration to me because he was showing us all this wildlife that I, as a child, never would have been able to experience in my hometown, which was mostly a big cityscape. So coming here in 1993, seeing a bear across the road, right at the Lost Mine Trailhead, right as we were coming up into the basin, really hooked my attention onto this place. My dad's company brought us back in 1995, and the same thing, I saw the same range of animals, which included javelina, tarantulas, scorpions, bears, and all sorts of other wildlife, deer, all of the things that you could expect to see in a wildlife-rich habitat that was still teeming with activity. Today, it's a little different. Today, there are no javelina playing in the parking lots like they used to. Today, sometimes you can drive entire stretches of highway and not see any serpents on the road, not see any scorpions, not see any lizards. Today, you can drive entire expanses of this desert and barely see a mouse on the road. And some of these declines in activity have to do with recent trends where there's a decline in water, drought, for an example, and also because of the wildfires that have passed through here recently. Last year, there was a wildfire. But before the wildfires, there were a couple of frosts that Texas normally doesn't receive, hard freezes, that lasted a little bit longer than usual. All of these challenges in the climate are causing subtle changes to the ecosystems. In many instances, I get to talk with people in this location who sometimes are familiar with this park and who recognize the same changes that I'm perceiving, that I'm able to report to you. And the interesting anomaly about it, the interesting take on it, is that ever since I've been coming here with some way to document what I've been seeing. I believe I had a camcorder in 1995. I definitely had one in 1995. I believe I had it in 1993. But either way, I do have footage from back in the mid-90s of this park. And I intend to transfer those videos into some type of digital format so that I can share those with you on this channel so you can see by comparison what it was like in the 90s and now what it's like almost 30 years later. Just 5 years ago, this place seemed to be just like it was in the 90s to me. And I'm basing that on the wildlife that I got to see all the time, which it broadened over the course of time. At first, I wasn't really successful when it came to finding snakes, for an example, and then suddenly I got really good at it. And at first I wasn't successful at seeing the felines like the bobcats and mountain lions, and then I got really good at it. And then suddenly something changed where you would normally see coyotes almost all the time at night somewhere or another. Suddenly you didn't see them as much. And I started to put together that I wasn't seeing some of the animals that I saw at night, like the owls and the nighthawks and the snakes. I wasn't seeing them because I wasn't seeing their prey. Usually at night, when you were able to drive through this park carefully and slowly, and when you're being observant as you're driving, you would see all types of mammals crossing the road regularly at night, because it can be a really hot environment. Right now, it's May, and it's not quite the full-on summertime here, and it's already hitting temperatures in the hundreds. However, next week it's going to be in the 80s here because of a cold front that's coming through. That front may promise to bring some kind of rainfall. That would be great, because this area definitely is parched, like many areas of the nation, and it seems like some areas are getting too much water. Some of these anomalies are causing hardships for the things that are out here. However, all of the things I've documented will allow me to bring to you the satisfaction of seeing these animals that I got to see while I was here. And while I've been here, normally I don't just sit on my easy chair and enjoy an entire day from the balcony. But in this particular instance, my trip started out with a hike up South Rim, and I stayed at the Juniper Canyon site, Juniper Canyon 1, and I stayed there for 3 nights. I had intended to stay something like 5 or 6 nights, and I did take enough water up there to do so for a normal time frame. The temperatures and the humidity and a number of other variables caused me to consume my water a little bit faster and more hungrily, with more thirst than I normally had in the past. And so, to play it safe, I only ended up staying 3 nights, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, and I came down on Thursday night. And I checked into this place here called the Chizos Mountains Lodge. They had one room available per what was told to me and sold to me, and it was in the stone cottages, which were built by the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. And when I checked into my room, I found a visitor, an expired visitor, someone who had passed away, and they were deceased, laying on the windowsill. So it wasn't a person, it was a rodent. There was a mouse that had died and was definitely decomposing on the windowsill. The smell was pretty interesting. And the other interesting thing was that apparently before this mouse had passed away, it left droppings on almost every surface that was exposed. So if you went into the bathroom, in this particular hotel room, there's a metal tray that goes above the sink, and on that metal tray was mouse droppings. So that normally would be where I would put my toothbrush, if I was staying there. And on all of the table surfaces and all the windowsills, there were mouse droppings all over the place. So I called the front desk. The front desk sent someone to perform a cleanup. I was in dire need of a shower because I had been up in the mountains for 3 nights, and I had definitely sweated and gotten really dirty, and so it was good that the room smelled, because when the porter came over, he probably would have already been offended just by my own smell. Anyway, the whole point is that the porter told me that it's probable that I would be able to get moved into another room, because apparently there's a holding of rooms for situations like this. So, sure enough, the hotel agreed to transfer me to a room. I moved into that room, and I really wanted to spend at least 2 nights, hopefully 3 nights, recovering from what I had just taken on, because I even carried this guitar up the trail with me so that I could find some inspiration and write some new content, and I did. And so the hotel, the following day, was able to, after allowing me to stay in the room that didn't have the mouse droppings, the following day I had to move one more time, and now that's the room I'm in right now. And I stayed for my first night in this room, and I've got one more night to go. After that, I'm going to the campgrounds. And in the campgrounds, I'm going to be there from Sunday night through Thursday night, so another week in this location. And just by coincidence, on tonight or tomorrow there is a front that's coming through. It's really the majority of it is gonna hit on Monday, but the temperatures are gonna drop down into the 80s, like I was saying earlier. So from there, I hope to be able to capture some footage of bears. In the past, I've been blessed with being able to see the bears almost like it was nothing. Like I could just drive up the road, just like when my father's company brought us to this place where I got to see it for the first time in my life. We were just coming up the road and literally just arriving at this park, and suddenly there was a bear crossing the road. The bears in this area didn't really start to repopulate this area until 1993. Prior to that, most of the bears had been removed from this area, from this region, and the resurgence didn't occur until right around the same time when I visited this park. Whether it's a coincidence or not, the point is I had the equipment to document it, and I was able to do so from that point in time until now. Several years back, Texas experienced a drought where one of the mama bears was so stressed from a lack of water that she basically passed out and refused to get up. And so the hotel had permission to put out basically like a dog dish type of situation, a bucket of water for the mama bear, and that's the only way that she was able to recover. It was due to the compassion of the people who work here, knowing what's going on, that bear survived it all. Now in these future years, as the droughts become more and more challenging, I have to wonder who is going to have that compassion to put any effort into gaining recognition for these areas that are also in need. It's not just humanity, as above, so below. Our wild regions are also stressed out. And so many of the things that I do now are geared towards working towards communicating on solutions for these situations. They're not geared towards entertainment and just enjoying idle time in these places, even though it seems like, well, this guy's playing music, he's got a spotting scope, he uses his photography gear. I sold all my camera equipment with the exception of one small camera, which I can't show you because it's actually the tripod this device is on is holding it down. Anyway, I've got a tiny Sony camera that is pocketable. I can carry it in my pocket, and normally I don't use it because I use my mobile device. But the point is, I had some really high-end camera gear, and I sold all of that to continue to give myself the chance to tell this story in a way that resonates with somebody, so that hopefully I can grow a subscribership even on this channel, for an example, where I have just enough viewers to monetize what it is that I'm saying. And it's not so much that I want to be monetized, it's more along the lines that there needs to be some recognition for wildlife and the struggles that it is going through right now. So as you're listening along, I hope that you're continuing to stay tuned in and to understand that I was never on the debate team. I'm not someone who's a mass communications expert. I'm just me, very passionate about this particular place, which is tied for number one as far as my favorite places on earth are concerned. And I'm telling you, the reason is because any place that I go to, I can find wildlife that is just unbelievable, and oftentimes it finds me. I don't even have to work to find the wildlife here. It just seems to be here. And that's the thing that concerns me now, is that over these past 3 or 4 years, it's been increasingly difficult to find some of the wildlife that I typically was able to see just by being here since 1993. So 30 years later, here we are in a situation where it's not so easy to find some of the wildlife. I talked with a gentleman that was in the room that I was in 2 nights ago, not last night, but the night before, and he's been visiting this park for 30 years, And over those 30 years, he noticed the same thing, that during the past 4 or 5 years, suddenly there are no javelina, no peccaries, no colored peccaries in this upper elevation area of the Chizos Mountains. I didn't even really see any evidence of them in the desert recently. I know they're there, and I know that this area is so expansive that they're somewhere, and there's at some hidden oasis in this park. I haven't walked into those oases just yet, but I have walked into many oases where I'm waking up things like Barbary sheep, which are aoudad, which some people mistake for desert bighorn. The Barbary sheep is an invasive species, but it's also a resilient species, more so sometimes than the desert bighorn that our areas keep trying to reintroduce. So it stands to be questioned as to what it is that we can do to help these environments. Because if we eliminate all the Barbary sheep and the bighorn are not surviving too well, and the mountain lions need something to consume that is of that type of nature, should we be eliminating the things that are flourishing? Should we? You see, it gets very complicated. The biggest complication, though, that I've encountered beyond all of what I just said in terms of the climate challenges is the indifference that many of us take towards the things that we're seeing. I've heard many times, you shouldn't focus on those things. If you don't like seeing the trash on the trails, don't focus on it. I understand that approach. I understand that what we focus on oftentimes seems to manifest more and more. And I also believe strongly that there are some things that we can't pretend are not there. For an example, the trash all over these park trail systems. We can't pretend that it's not there. We can't just not talk about it to somehow make it go away. We have to actually participate in picking it up and disposing of or reallocating it properly. And that's the part where I believe we can make tremendous changes if we begin to perceive these items as resources. I'm on a wooden balcony that has slats, and beneath me, under these slats, I just contributed to some of the rubbish that's down there because I lost a guitar pick. I basically was playing, and one of my guitar picks fell down between the slats. It's somewhere down there. I couldn't find it, and also it'd be next to impossible for me to get it. And as I looked down there, even though there's a no smoking sign right here, I couldn't tell you how many cigarettes I saw. Some of them are just half done, some of them are down to the third, most of them are pretty well smoked out. But it's littered with cigarettes under here. It's littered with plastic bottle caps. It's littered with pens. It's littered with all of the things, a guitar pick. It's littered with all of the things that we as people are bringing into this area, and sometimes either through just sheer carelessness or maybe wind or etc. and so forth, our items are becoming obstacles. On the trail system, as I was walking the South Rim, there was toilet tissue all over the place. And that toilet tissue was definitely in an unsanitary state. It was used. It was spent toilet paper. And so all over the trails are bits of toilet paper. Some people had courteously weighted it down with rocks. But, the animals last year in this park, for an example, the bears, were so stressed from not having enough food that it was reported by the rangers here that the bears were eating other bears' scat just to survive. So anything that had a smell on it, of course, the bear's going to easily be able to move any rock that we can move, and toilet paper will, of course, just begin to become a part of the free-floating stuff that's in the environment, that's free to blow around whenever the winds kick up. And the winds kick up here quite often. This is a mountain region, and so it's breezy most of the time in some format or another, whether it's just because of the temperature shift when the sun goes down or comes up, or because of the fronts that happen to go because of the elevation differences. So all of these things are just incremental additions to the pile of rubbish that is building up without any foreseeable leadership that shows how to reverse and at least at first stop the addition of these challenges. And the first thing that we can do to participate is to see what we can do ourselves. We can really only manage ourselves, right? And when we start to manage ourselves, we can become an example for other people. And these are the only ways these communications are going to be broadcast, is if someone literally can, make it so easy that we can sing a song about it. And so a lot of the songs that I try to write are catered to talking about compassion. And I know that at some point in the past, compassion wasn't in fashion, but compassion is definitely the thing that is needed. And animals even have compassion for one another. And if you really pay attention, sometimes we have compassion for animals as well. It's not uncommon for many people that I've talked with to say, I don't like watching those shows, when animals are hunting other animals, because I feel bad for the prey. We have compassion. Some of the animals that get taken as prey have relative animals who also have compassion. They'll go and visit the bones of their lost loved ones, whether they perished because they were prey or because of old age or what have you. These are all things that we know are true, and because we know they're true, sometimes we just kind of let it go in one ear and out the other as, yeah, okay, that's true. But to actually think about it, to think with compassion, would make us so aware that we would not want to go into a location like this, take toilet paper and just leave it in a place where it's going to blow away and become a biohazard. And not only that, but an eyesore, and maybe even actually getting sores in your eyes from encountering some of these biohazards. These are all things that I'm trying to raise awareness for. The only way that I know how to do that is definitely hasn't been with my camera lately, because people are a little bit shy and wary of hearing stories where someone's introducing any information that might sound possibly negative. This is not negative news. This is true observation. And when we provide true observation, even if it seems like it's challenging, it should be something that we can also consider. And it's going to take someone communicating effectively in a way that helps to establish these channels that allow us to move forward through the challenges that we're being faced with. So that's basically where I feel that my mission begins and where my photography, entertainment-based photography ends. So my imagery that I share and the music that I share is entirely designed to broaden the awareness of our global crises. And the only thing I know how to do that with is my voice. I've been told I never used to talk in the past, and I've been told that I needed to speak up if there was something that I really wanted someone to understand and become aware of. So that's basically what this journey is about. So thank you so much for watching the Jeep Journals. That's what this channel is called right now. And thank you for hearing my story on this channel called YouTube. I'm telling you about myself. So on your YouTube channel, you can do the same thing. You can tell people about your journey. And many of us aren't participating. And even if we are, many of us are being eclipsed by the powers that be. And by the powers that be, what I mean are, let's just say for an example, in one example of this story, I want to tell you something that made me feel a little bit sad. When I was moved from the first room that had the decaying mouse in it to the second room, I was placed in a room here where one of my own pictures was. In the past, when I started visiting this location with my father, I noticed that the pictures in the rooms had nothing to do with this region. They had flowers from Colorado, they had flowers from Arkansas, they had scenery from other mountainous streams in other states, and I suggested to the park management that it would be nice to have photographs that were from this area. And park management contacted me at some point and said, that sounds really like a great idea. We would love for some of your photographs to be on display in our rooms, because they had seen my work, and my work was pretty impressive. I take pictures of things that other people normally overlook. And I happened to be in the right place at the right time many times to catch some of the anomalies that are just gorgeous. Anyone can do that, but having the right gear definitely helps, and sometimes having a talent for taking the right composure for a photograph factors in, and apparently I had what it took. So the hotel made me an offer I couldn't refuse, which was basically they let me and my parents stay in some rooms here while I presented these pictures to them, and so they traded me some room time for the opportunity to have my photos in these rooms, and then also subsequently sold in the gift shop. They never sold my photographs in the gift shop, but they did put my photographs on the walls in here. They did have the photo credentials at the bottom that had my name and a website. And recently, this place was taken over by a resort company. According to the general manager here, the resort company wanted to make some changes to the way things were displayed in the room. And so what they did was take the photographs, especially mine, that had the credentials at the bottom, and they added some borders to the pictures, matting, picture matting. It's basically the border that goes around the edge of the I'm trying to pretend I'm making a matting on this frame right here. It's basically a matting, and it covered up all of the photo credentials that were at the bottom that showed the name of the photographer, which was me. That kind of made me sad, that someone would do that and take my name out of the equation. It gives me less credibility as a photographer if I have no credentials. The national park did the same thing to me right here in this national park itself. I had the opportunity, because of one of the rangers who used to work here, to take a photograph for the port of entry, the Mexican crossing, the Boquillas crossing of out into Mexico. They basically wanted to make an informative sign for that crossing, and a ranger contacted me and asked for my help to capture an image that would be, I guess, captivating. And so I did that. I went out of my way to plan an outing around trying to capture just the right photo, and it took a bit of effort to get to just the right elevation to try to take the shot in conditions where wildlife back then was very common, and that included rattlesnakes, scorpions, all kinds of stinging and venomous critters. I navigated all that territory, took the picture, and my picture, sure enough, was selected to be used on the crossing sign at the Boquillas port of entry. And when it was manufactured, when the sign was manufactured, somehow my name wasn't put onto the photo credentials as I was told it would be. And so I talked with the park superintendent, and the park superintendent said, yeah, that's not the way it was supposed to be. We're sorry about that. We'll make a little brass plaque and stick your name on the sign. And they did. Well, later on in the future, I saw that brass plaque had since been removed. So in a lot of ways, all of my contributions, which are, to me, work. This is my real work. I've worked in a lot of different jobs. I've worked on systems, information systems, I've washed cars. You know, I've done a lot of different things, and the expanse of my work still comes down to I was making money to pursue my passion, and wildlife is my passion. As you can see, I have a spotting scope, and it's definitely a pricey spotting scope. It's modular so that you can break it down and put it into a backpack if you want to. And I have backpacked with that modular scope, and I have used it to try and document many things. This particular outing, I was able to record the lunar eclipse that happened this past weekend on Sunday, which I guess was the 15th, March the 15th. And all of this that I'm doing it's seemingly going to waste, like everything that many of us are doing are seemingly going to waste. If we're manufacturing electronics that are simply based on lithium batteries that are failing, like let's say those fitness watches that have tiny batteries in them, when they go defunct, when the batteries die, what are we doing with those things? Are they getting refurbished? There's a lot of things that are being manufactured that aren't going to get refurbished, that are just going to continue to become additional landfill items. Donations to those local donation shops where somebody might have a chance to buy those things and where they might not. The whole point is that in this era right now, more than anything, we need to broaden our awareness of all of the things that we can possibly do. But the first thing is to become compassionate about the life that we pretty much rely on. All of Mother Nature is giving us everything that we have. That spotting scope didn't come from man, it came from nature. All of the pieces that went into that carbon fiber tripod came from nature. The resources that it took to make even this device that I'm recording this on came from nature. And until we understand that we're taking from something and not nurturing it in return, then we basically have a lack of compassion. With a lack of compassion, a lack of awareness, comes a pitfall of having the ability to deface or devalue these things around us without even having any consideration. How many stories have you seen where people have vandalized certain artifacts around the nation, around the globe, just because they wanted to do whatever, put their name on a rock, for an example? How many times have you seen pictographs that have been errantly tarnished by our own generations? Not just the generations of the past, in particular lately by our recent generations. So I've got to wonder then, is that coming from a lack of parenting or a lack of education, or is parenting and education the same thing? Are we really just being educated by our online systems? All these questions are things that we need to bring to our own heart. And once our heart and mind are aligned, and once we physically are able to align with all of those components of our thoughts, our actions will prove to be fruitful instead of being destructive. So I feel like I'm a little bit of both. You know, I grew up very destructive because that's how we were raised. We were taught by our former generations, the throwaway mentality. We were taught these things. I was talking with someone on the trail system who said, this is the system we have. You know, this is what we have to work with. He held up a big giant jug of water in a plastic bottle. He said, this is what we have. This is what we have to work with. And as he pointed out, with his income level, he wasn't able to acquire some of the equipment that I had. And the same goes for me. You know, at my income level, I know I wasn't able to acquire some of the quality items that other people had. And I wasn't able to travel to all of the locations that many people have been able to travel to. It was only with my connections, with my relationships, that I was able to travel to various locations and experience those things. And during those experiences, I found that more and more it seems like it was just a consumer-driven thing for many people to do, to travel. Like if you traveled somewhere, the first thing that people would do is stop at some wholesale store to buy a shirt from that location. I mean, even the shirt I have is a promotional shirt from a rock concert that I got to go to, and all of these things are commercialized in such a way that I begin to wonder if it's just the entertainment that brings people to places, whereas for me it was the wildlife that brought me to this place over and over. If I could have ridden along with Marty Stauffer on Wild America, I would have done that, because that is my passion, wildlife and nature. So I started a channel right here that you're watching called the Jeep Journals, and it's talking about wellness and conservation. If I myself am not well, then I do not have the capabilities to make better decisions. I will become more of a resource drain. For an example, if I continue to make poor choices and eat foods that cause me to have excessive blood pressure, then the medications that I have to take, which come in plastic bottles and with all these labels and layers of paperwork and layers of resources that are necessary to accomplish all these tasks, I'm a drain on the resources. And in a way, it seems like we've been all taught a certain way so that we can continue to contribute to a system that is not sustainable. It has not been sustainable. And we know that. We know this. And I believe the only reason we get kind of nervous when we talk about these things are because it causes a little bit of fear. Well, what do we do? How's this going to impact our retirement? Well, let me ask you, if you're able to retire but none of the workers are able to retire, do you think any of the work that's getting done by the workers is going to be of that craftsmanship that it used to be when people could aspire to retire? Or is it going to become temporary? The temporary things that we do without thinking about how we can provide value to one another are just entertainment value. It's not even value. The only thing that we can do to achieve what we want to achieve, to better the situation, is to be better. And to be better, we need to be open to learning with one another. We need to be open to communicating and taking action with one another. We can't just defer to an authority who has literally written a book. The person who wrote the book might not be walking around out here at night finding the barn owl that the ornithologist here didn't believe was even in this park when I saw it. I started to record this segment earlier, so I don't know if I told this story because of a video situation, but in case I said it already, just go ahead and stay tuned to hear this story one more time. But one time in this park, way back when I was showing my friends this park, I encountered a barn owl that was hanging out on a mile marker sign near the Dog Canyon area of this park. And I took a picture of it. I had a pretty unique setup that allowed me to take a picture at night. And the next day we went to the visitor center to try and look up a different type of animal. We went to find a book on snakes to identify a different type of animal. And while we were there, I asked the park ranger, who happened to be the ornithologist, the birder, about barn owls. And he said, we don't have barn owls here. There's never been a barn owl here. And so I turned my camera around so that he could see the LCD, and I said, well, what is this? And he said, that's a barn owl. Where'd you see it? And he was so excited that he had me fill out a sightings report for the barn owl that was here. Now, I've seen barn owls here plenty at night, all over, mostly on that stretch that I'm talking about, though. So I believe they pass through that region frequently. The thing is, not many people pass through those regions frequently at night. Many of the people who come to this park enjoy it during the day, might watch the stars from the campgrounds that are here, but they may not travel the roads at night. I do. And I do that because I'm passionate about finding all I can about wildlife. In order to do that, I have to cover the hours that wildlife covers, which are 24/7. So when I come out here, sometimes I have a considerable sleep deficiency. Like, for an example, last night I went for a journey to the Santa Elena Canyon around midnight, and I didn't really get back until about 2 in the morning. And that was sleep, that I traded sleep hours to go and see what was on the road. One of the things I noticed that was not on the road were the reptiles or the nighthawks or the owls, and even to a degree many of the rodents. There was definitely some mice on the road. The insects seemed to be somewhat abundant. The bats were not. All of the things that used to be are definitely different now. And just like when I was talking with the gentleman that was on the balcony in the same building where I was staying the first night, not last night but the night before, the same thing that he noticed was what I was noticing, which is during the past 5 years, the collared peccaries, the javelina, have been on the decline. So we began to talk about all the different things, the factors that are building up to this immense situation that we are all facing, whether we're facing in that direction or not. Some of us are not aware that we're facing a situation. We are facing a situation, or we shall soon be, and buying and manufacturing and reading another book to try and figure out the marketing aspect of how to make money correcting these situations is the last thing that should be on anyone's mind when it comes to recovering the health, restoring the health of our resources. The same goes for our own health. The money is not the aspect that we need to consider. If our health is bad and healthcare is too much that we can't afford this, that, and the other, we need to figure out what is it that we can do to correct our own health. If we are continuing to take medications for cholesterol, but continuing to eat all of the foods that present us with these cholesterol issues, we're really just living in a state of dormant unawareness. And it's a terrible waste of life. And I believe that we're here so that we can share life, to love, to enjoy. And in order to do that, we need to be able to participate in communication, full communication with one another. And so during my journey, I've found that some people are very unaware, unable to communicate. And the people who are unable to communicate oftentimes get extremely agitated and do everything they can to denounce the messenger. I'm just a messenger. I'm an observer, a messenger, and a participant, all at the same time, just like you are. So thank you so much for participating by watching this video. Please don't forget to click on subscribe. I know that it sounds cheesy, but I'm quite a number of subscribers away from the opportunity to be what's called monetized. And what I'm trying to do when I say I want to achieve monetization on this channel, I'm trying to make it so that I can continue to easily travel to areas where I can do it in a less detrimental way. Right now, the way that I have to do it is by jetting around in a not so fuel efficient vehicle to get to where I'm going, in order to stay in a place that costs other people time and effort to clean up the dead mice and rodent droppings that happen to be in an area that I was, hoping to just get a shower from. These things, all the resources, I don't need all these resources to do what I'm doing. What I need is the time, and as you've heard it put, time is money. Well, money can create time, and that system that we have, I'm not worried about the money. I'm not worried about the income of it. I would just like for it to be a little bit easier for someone like me, who is a relative unknown, who's being erased from his own work in places that he loves. And it would make it easier for me to be able to tell the story without being erased from the places that I'm at. If I were able to tell the story here, for an example, in a way that captivates you, then it should captivate somebody else. But the only way that it's going to happen is if we share that insight. If we're only watching this insight and thinking, well, I know this person, and I've got my job, I'm comfortable, I have my retirement, I have my pension, I have my social security. Like many of the people that I was talking with on the trails, younger and in similar age brackets, we don't even know what social security will be like, because there is no social security value that's going to be present for many of the people who are under a certain age, who are under a certain number of supposed working years. For many of the people who worked and made a prolific amount of money in the management areas, how often have we found that management didn't really even know the job anymore? They couldn't do the work because they were not the people who were doing the actual work with the actual technology that was out there. And furthermore, with all of the technological advances, has our lifestyle really become all that easier? Over here you see a spotting scope. The spotting scope isn't made with any kind of digital technology. It's just basically it's what it was. It's glass, it's got optics, quality optics, and it will last for multiple generations. The spotting scope would it's a thing that it's not going to be a throwaway one-time use item. We can make items like this. We can inventory items, and even if it seemed like a disposable item, like let's say children's toys for infants that are growing up, when you get the chair, the raised chairs for the child to sit on while they're being fed. These things can be sterilized and repurposed for other children immediately. We don't have to hold these in our attics and have our attics filled with memories that are melting and decaying and going to disuse. We don't have to then have someone pass away and donate all that stuff and or throw away all those things to where they end up in landfills. We can immediately take anything that has any kind of structure and do something with it. We can take a pair of sunglasses that has one broken lens and inventory it, and at some place, at some point, the cost savings warehouse stores will only carry things that were already manufactured, and they'll have so much inventory and so much wherewithal that we can transfer one piece of equipment to another piece to another place to put together those incomplete pieces, so that we have the ability to remanufacture and reuse these things that are able to be useful for a long period of time. In much the same way, we can also discontinue, immediately discontinue using all of the one-time convenience type items that are detrimental to our society. Like I said, there's a number of bottle caps under these floorboards here. Apparently, they fall off easily, and I say that not just because they're under these floorboards that I'm sitting on right now, but also because they're all over the trail system right here. They didn't used to be 4 years ago, but at a certain point when, let's say for an example, when COVID occurred and then suddenly travel bans were lifted, many people immediately just wanted to travel. So they're like, I couldn't travel during that time, I need to go right now, so I'm going to go. And I heard that we need to stay hydrated, and every picture that I saw and every video that I saw about visiting Big Bend said, be sure to carry plenty of water, and it showed someone carrying a bottle of water. And so many people went and just bought the one-time use bottles of water. This is reusable. It still took resources from the environment, but it will last for more than my own lifetime. It'll last for many lifetimes, probably, as long as it's well cared for. So compassion allows us to care for things. If we're being raised in a way where we have no compassion, then we have no vision. We can't see that the actions we're taking are destructive. We can't see that the magazine subscriptions that we continue to base our educations on are destructive. We can't see that basically the supporting of supporting of entities that are not really compassionate is not beneficial. We can't see that the people who even work here, for an example, are sometimes not even aware of the type of life that they have here. We won't notice that there are things that are wrong, is what I'm saying. And so without care, we just let things happen in the direction that they're going. So if you like the direction that things are going in the world, don't subscribe to this channel. If you think that we can do better, please subscribe to this channel. Please try to share this insight with other people. Please try to help sing the song that makes the whole world go green. So thanks so much for watching. Until next time, my name is Ray, and this is the Jeep Journals, and I've got some fly that really wants to go in my nose, which is the only reason that I'm having to respond to it a certain way. In the same manner, that's basically, look, it's in the same manner, that's basically what our whole world is comprised of. We have some annoyances, we have things that cause us to take certain actions, we have things that might be parasitic, like mosquitoes, etc., and also entities that take money and don't really do a whole lot in return. And we have things that make sense. And the things that make sense should also make dollars. So if that makes sense to you, please vote for this channel by clicking on the thumbs up. Please vote for this channel by subscribing. And please vote for this channel by sharing. Sharing is caring. So until next time, I hope you enjoy understanding a little bit more about why I like this park. I like this park because of all of the wildlife that's in this park. I like this park because it was like my own personal wild America. And it was for a lot of people too, until things changed not too long ago. So until next time, peace, love, and all that old school stuff.